welcome to this week's edition of World Today. Even as G7 plus 3 countries met in the United Kingdom, the world has witnessed an increase in spate of attacks, hate crime, as also attacks on journalists. We'll talk about that in detail, but another important development was the election of the President of the United Nations General Assembly. The Maldives, for the first time, will be taking over as the President of the UNGA. On Spotlight this week is the President-elect of the UNGA and Foreign Minister of Maldives, Shahid Abdullah. Beginning of this week, member states of the United Nations General Assembly chose and elected the new President of the Assembly. The Maldives, for the first time, was elected as head of the world body. Maldivian Foreign Minister Shahid Abdullah will be taking over as the President in September. In a hotly contested fight between the Maldives and Afghanistan, Shahid Abdullah garnered 143 votes, while Zalmay Rasool received 48 votes out of the 191 votes polled. The election to the UNGA presidential post is held on an annual basis, rotated amongst various regional groupings. The 76th UNGA session, that is 2021-2022, was the turn of the Asia-Pacific group. This is the first time the Maldives will be occupying the office of the President of the UNGA. While Afghanistan was the first to announce participation, the Maldives was the first to declare its candidate's name in December 2018. Kabul announced the name of Zalmay Rasool in January of 2021, leaving him very little time to canvass for elections. However, the blocs seem to be divided, with many pledging support to the Maldives, while it is said that China backed the Afghan candidate. It is not unknown that the new Solih administration in Malé came into power after much struggle against the Beijing-backed government of Abdullah Yameen in the Maldives. This is an India Today exclusive. Joining me now is the new President-elect of the United Nations General Assembly, elected with a 3/4 majority, the first Maldivian to become the President and Foreign Minister of Maldives, Shahid Abdullah, joining us here on India Today. Many thanks for joining us here, sir. Firstly, many congratulations. A very important and a fierce speech made by you after your victory. If you could elaborate what the main thrust of this entire presidency is going to be. You spoke of the term being a presidency of hope.
Thank you very much, Geeta. It's a pleasure to meet you again. And thank you for that kind words to the Maldives and to me. Indeed, it's a very, very happy day for the Maldives, a proud day for the Maldives. We are delighted of this victory. The presidency of hope comes about because of the challenges that we have gone through in the last 12 months. The devastation, death, despair, and sorrow humanity has gone through due to COVID-19. I think it is time that we start giving our people the hope that they so badly need. Yes, we have a vaccine. We have also seen humanity at its best. We have seen frontline workers sacrificing themselves, taking care of people so much that we should be celebrating the best of humanity. And to celebrate the best of humanity, we need a presidency of hope to be reined in to the General Assembly. And I proposed that I bring this presidency of hope based on 5 rays of hope. And if I may, the 5 rays of hope included, the first ray of hope is recovering from COVID-19. The COVID-19 devastation it has caused, we need to have a strategy to continue on a path that would ultimately end this pandemic, deal with the new variants that are coming up. We have to address the vaccine equity issue. In the world, the vaccine imbalance is so much that it needs to be addressed very urgently. In the rich countries, 1 in 5 people are vaccinated, whereas in the developing world, it is 1 in 500 people that are vaccinated. So we need to start addressing this issue. We need to make sure that vaccine equity is reached so that, we all know that no one is safe until everyone is safe. We also need to start addressing the issue of recovery, the economic, address the economic side of this. In every country, it is really devastating.
The most important point that you made is in the beginning that has to do with vaccine equity, that nobody's safe till everybody's safe, that the developing and least developed countries are suffering at the hands of this pandemic more than the developed countries who have either already obtained vaccines for their entire population or are even hoarding vaccines. But using vaccine as bilateral agenda, which is what the United Nations had criticized, that this cannot be used as a country's bilateral agenda, that it should be, if they're giving it, it should be under COVAX alliance or else for self-consumption. Is that something that you agree with?
Well, vaccine nationalism is something we should try to avoid as much as possible. We have to keep in mind that it is in the interest of every country, every person, to get everyone vaccinated. Unless everyone is vaccinated, there is no safety. So let us come together on this. Let us work together on it, and let us make sure that the entire world is vaccinated. And that is going to be my target.
Finally, so you also spoke about human rights issues that are going to be very important for you. Rights of peoples across the world is going to be very important. And you spoke about youth. Now, if you've seen the recent past, a lot of youth activists have started talking about rights issues. They are a part of that entire discourse on human rights and are raising their voices. How do you propose looking at rights issues and vis-a-vis countries where we have seen oppression of some kind or the other? And how do you then see the role of the youth in ensuring that they bring about at least the conversation within their own countries or internationally of equity, of equality, of justice?
We have over 1.8 billion youth in the world, and they are starting to talk in much, much louder voice than they used to on economic related issues, on environment related issues, and on gender-related issues. The voices are getting stronger and stronger. So here at the United Nations, I intend to give them the voice that they should have been given, should be given, and I intend to make sure that even in the PGA's office, I give them opportunity to work with me so that the voices of the youth will be not only heard, but also will be seen. The opportunities are given to them.
Congratulations again for having achieved this victory. 143 votes that you garnered is a huge number, 3/4 majority. We look forward to all the pledges that you made, all the key points that you made, and see how you're going to really implement them in the coming future as you take over in September. China has been building inroads into Eastern European countries, Hungary being its latest and strongest ally. But people haven't appreciated the bonhomie between Beijing and Budapest. Here's a report on what happened in the capital city of Hungary this week.
On 5th June, nearly 15,000 people took to Budapest streets protesting. They are against the plans of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán to host Chinese Fudan University in Budapest.
El akarja törölni azt a diákváros projektet, ami 12 000 kollégiumi férőhelyet és 5800 bérlakást jelentene a diákváros területén. Erre a területre húzzák föl azt a Fudan Egyetemet, amit pedig hitelből építenének, méghozzá úgy, hogy kínai cégek építenék ezt, és kínai munkaerővel húznák föl a hírek szerint. Mi ezt a csomagot így teljes mértékben elfogadhatatlannak tartjuk.
The Hungarian government basically cut a deal with China and with a Chinese university, Shanghai-based Fudan University, to build their first overseas campus in the European Union in Budapest. And this campus would be paid by Hungarian taxpayers. So Hungary is building a campus for China on Hungarian taxpayer money. And of course, this freaked out many people.
Megállítjuk a Fudan beruházást, és folytatjuk. Minden egyes ügyben kiállunk, amikor a kormány a 99% érdeke helyett az 1%-os kiváltságos érdekek fogja képviselni.
Experts fear that this 1.9 billion project would place a huge burden on Hungarian taxpayers and send the wrong political message because of the alleged human rights abuses in China.
Facing this huge protest and facing opposition, it seems that the Hungarian government may just back down, but we don't yet know. So the thing is that we're going to have a parliamentary elections next year, next April. And this is becoming a very sensitive and hot topic. And it seems that the government is not willing to take the risk. So maybe they try to postpone the project in order to avoid this from becoming a campaign issue.
China defended its plans to build a campus of the Shanghai-based Fudan University campus at Budapest.
我们希望匈牙利的有关人士保持客观、理性、科学的态度，避免将中匈之间正常的人文交流政治化、污名化，维护好两国友好合作的大局。
The Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán is a right-wing populist. He recently has faced severe criticism from the European Union for his authoritarian ways and staunch anti-immigration stand. On 3rd June, European Union's top court dismissed Hungary's attempt to overturn a European Parliament action to hold it accountable for what it considers to be a breach of the bloc's values. Hungary is at the risk of losing voting rights in the bloc.
The fate of the new government that is all set to ouster Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to be decided this week. However, clashes have begun in East Jerusalem, much like what had happened in the days leading up to the conflict in May. However, for now, the ceasefire is being implemented and respected by both sides.
The presence of a radical Jewish leader at Jerusalem Old City's Damascus Gate sparked resistance among locals on 10 June. Israeli police used stun grenades and sprayed skunk water from a water cannon to disperse angry Palestinians. Several protesting Palestinians were arrested following radical Jewish politician Itamar Ben-Gvir's public address.
אם יש מתפרעים, תעצרו את המתפרעים. למה בכל הפגנה, בכל אירוע, בית המשפט העליון אומר, אם יש התפרעות, אם יש מישהו שמאיים, שיעצרו אותו. למה כאן אי אפשר לעצור? כמה הם? 30, 40 פורעים שצועקים כאן? מי הם? מה הם?
Dozens of protesters gathered in the West Bank city of Ramallah in support of Palestinians in Jerusalem. Itamar Ben-Gvir had planned procession to go through the old city's Muslim quarter to mark Israel's capture of East Jerusalem in 1967 war. This was the second attempt to carry out this parade. Last month, when the radical Jewish leaders tried to carry out the parade, heavy fighting broke out. Some 254 people were killed in Gaza and 13 in Israel before a ceasefire took effect on May 21st. Since those 11 days of bombing, sporadic clashes have become routine affairs in the region. Israeli and Palestinian protesters gathered to demand that Israeli police remove access barriers in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, where clashes with Jewish settlers have contributed to a wave of unrest across the country in May. Those who were involved in these unrest have been arrested. Their homes are to be demolished. It is part of Israel's policy of punitive home demolitions, which rights groups view as collective punishment.
The court refuses to address the legality of this policy, whether punitive home demolitions are legal. They're only looking at the circumstances of each individual case. It is very rare in these circumstances that the court has prevented punitive home demolitions. Since 2014, we have had 83 petitions to the High Court against punitive home demolitions. Only 10 have succeeded in stopping the demolition.
On the other side of the Jerusalem city, confrontations between Palestinians and Israeli police resumed on 5th of June.
אנחנו מגנים כל הסתה ואלימות מכל צד שהוא, גם כשאחרים שותקים, כשההסתה נגדנו משתוללת, כולל אתמול בלילה. אני רוצה להסביר מה זה הסתה. הסתה זה לא ביקורת פוליטית. הסתה זה קריאה לאלימות. זו חציית הקו בין ביקורת להסתה. במשך תקופה ארוכה קוראים נגדנו, נגדי וגם נגדכם, קריאות איומות, כולל קריאות מפורשות, לרצוח אותי, בני משפחתי, את רעייתי. שקט, כמעט שקט, בשיח הציבורי הכללי והתקשורתי, שקט. אבל העיקרון חייב להיות ברור ואחיד לכולם. הסתה ואלימות והסתה לאלימות תמיד יהיו מחוץ לתחום, זה אותו הדבר.
The new coalition government of 8 parties from across the political spectrum will have to navigate through this to prevent another terrible bloodshed. It first has to win the vote in Israeli parliament, Knesset. It will take place within a week. Opposition leader Yair Lapid and his main coalition partner, Naftali Bennett, recently declared that they had reached a deal to form a new government and have mustered a majority in the 120-member Knesset. This would prevent Israel from going for another election. Israel had 4 elections in 2 years.
Welcome back to World Today. Now, attacks against journalists in Pakistan continue. The latest incident being that of veteran journalist and member of the Punjab Assembly in Pakistan, Sayyida Maimunat Morsin, also popularly known as Jugnu Morsin. Morsin, wife of senior journalist Najm Sethi, was allegedly intercepted on Hujra Road by a person identified as Muhammad Hussain and some other unidentified gunmen who were riding on motorcycles. The armed men waylaid her vehicle and opened fire on it. The suspects then fled the scene while hurling threats at the MPA. According to the FIR, one of the main suspects, Muhammad Yasin, had threatened the veteran journalist on his social media post, saying if the rally of Jugnu Morsin reached Judge Kalan, no one would be spared. Last month, Islamabad-based YouTuber Asad Ali Tur was attacked in the federal capital by unidentified assailants who broke into his house and thrashed him, followed by putting senior journalist Hamid Mir off air for accusing the army. In July last year, journalist Matiullah Jan was picked up by state agencies. The threats and intimidation against journalists in Pakistan continue. Let's take you through some other stories making news from across the globe in World at a Glance.
In Canada, on 6th June, a driver plowed a pickup truck into a family of 5. He killed 4 of them and seriously injured the other. Canadian police arrested the man and called it an attack that targeted the victims because they were Muslims. The attack has shaken Canada. It is a country that largely accepts immigrants. The attack drew denunciations from Canada's Prime Minister, who called it a hate crime directed at Muslims. An express train barreled into another that had derailed in southern Pakistan on 7th June. 63 people lost their lives and more than 100 were injured. The cause of the derailment of the first train is still not clear. The driver of the second train claims he braked when he saw the disabled train but did not have time to avoid the collision. About 1,100 passengers were on board the 2 trains. On 8th June, UN appeals judges upheld the conviction of former Bosnian Serb military chief Ratko Mladic for genocide and other offences committed during Bosnia's 1992-95 war. They confirmed his life sentence. This ruling means the 79-year-old former general who terrorized Bosnia throughout the war will spend the rest of his life in prison. The second baby for Duke and Duchess of Sussex was born on 4th June. Prince Harry and Meghan named their second child Lilibet Lily Diana Mountbatten Windsor. She was born in California. The child is 8th in line to the British throne, and her name pays tribute to both Harry's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, whose family nickname is Lilibet, and his late mother, Princess Diana.
Governments across developed countries are now questioning and probing classified ad modules of social media giants like Facebook and Google. Apple is also under scanner since its own app store is accused of monopoly. Take a look.
In the first week of June, France's anti-competition watchdog decided to fine Google €220 million for abusing its dominant position in the online advertising business. It's an unprecedented move in the world to look into complex algorithmic auction processes through which online display advertising works. Google agreed to pay the fine. Around the same time, European Union and British regulators opened dual antitrust investigations into Facebook. They will be looking into whether the social media giant distorted competition in the classified advertising market by using data it collects from rival services.
We have opened a formal antitrust investigation to assess whether Facebook has violated EU competition rules by using advertising data gathered from advertisers in order to compete with them in the markets where Facebook is active, such as classified ads. A second part of the investigation will also assess whether Facebook ties its online classified ads service, Facebook Marketplace, to its social network, so the Facebook platform we all know, and if this is in breach of EU competition rules, of course.
Just the keyboard.
Across the Atlantic, Apple is defending the company's iPhone App Store against charges that it has grown into an illegal monopoly. In an antitrust case, the maker of the popular video game Fortnite, Epic Games, is trying to topple the so-called walled garden for iPhone and iPad apps that welcomes users and developers while keeping competition out. Created by Steve Jobs a year after iPhone's 2007 debut, the App Store has become a key revenue source for Apple. It is the money-making machine that helped power the company to a $57 billion profit in its last fiscal year.
That's all in this edition of World Today. See you next week with some more in-depth analysis of international events. News and updates continue on the other side of a short break.